So last week we looked at the chronology from when Abraham left Haran until Jacob brought the family down into Egypt. And we noticed that the Bible gives us ages for the patriarchs at various points. We noticed that Abraham was 75 when he left Haran, and that he was 100 years old when Isaac was born. And then Isaac was 60 years old when Jacob was born. And that Jacob was 130 years old when he brought the family down into Egypt. So now what we want to do is assemble a chronology like we did before. And this time we're going to start with Abraham leaving Haran. So Abraham leaves Haran when he's 75. And then when he's 100 years old, Isaac is born. So we can note that there has been 25 years that passed between when Abraham left Haran and when Isaac was born. And then we have from when Isaac was born until Isaac was 60 years old, which is when Jacob was born. So we have 60 years passed. So now we have a 25-year span that connects to a 60-year span. And then we know that Jacob, from the time that he was born until the time that he was 130 years old, that's when they entered Egypt, when he brought the family down into Egypt. So now we have a chronology from when Abraham left Haran, 25 years plus 60 years plus 130 years, 215 years. So we have a point where he leaves Haran, but we also have a point where they entered Egypt. And if you remember, that was our previous section that we did from the Exodus. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 40, it says that the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in the land of Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, on the very same day, that all the armies of the Lord came out of Egypt. So we had the Exodus, and we had the 430-year span, and we presume that that was when they entered Egypt. So now we have a common point between these two sections, so we should be able to put them together. So if we put the end of this chronology, when Jacob was 130 and they entered Egypt, it should match up to the beginning of the 430-year sojourn that they spent in Egypt. And what we'll do next week is we'll check that out. And the way we're going to do that is we want to look at the age of Joseph. So if we can see how old Joseph was at the point where they entered Egypt. But the problem is we're not told precisely how old he is at that point. And like we did with, like the Bible shows us with Abraham, we're told how old he was when Isaac was born and how old Isaac was when Jacob was born. We're not told how old Jacob was when Joseph was born. But there's another way that the Bible gives us to figure it out. So this will be for next week. If we want to read Genesis chapter 41, we'll notice that we're told Joseph's age in Genesis chapter 41 a few years before. And then we're given a clue also in that chapter as to how long that was before. And if you also want to read Genesis chapter 45, that's where the second part of that clue is that will help us to figure out, since we're told how old Joseph is before at a certain point, that'll tell us how long it was. You can figure it out that way. So that'll be the question for next week. How old was Joseph when Jacob brought the family down into Egypt? And that's it. So we'll see you next week.